Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome to another roundtable discussion here from the Concours Virtual. They've all been outstanding classes, but this is going to be one of the most outstanding. This is Winner Takes It All. We've got a great lineup of experts you can see on the screen in front of you. So allow me to introduce myself and them, and then we'll kick off the conversation. My name is Richard Charlesworth, and even if you haven't bumped into me at a classic event, you may have heard me over the PA as the Master of Ceremonies for the Quail, a motorsports gathering, as a curator and joint presenter of the Concours of Elegance, Hampton Court Palace, or a presenter at the London Concours. I'm a reasonably well-established concours judge and quite well known for my association with Bentley, having worked for the company since 1974, most recently as the Director of Royal and VIP Relations and Head of the Heritage Collection, and as Brand Ambassador until I retired in 2017. Now, you probably know Bill Warner best as the founder of the Amelia Island Concours d'Elegance 25 years ago. But Bill has spent his entire life working around cars. He started in the parts department of a Florida car dealership, acting as gopher for the dealership's race team at weekends. This began a love affair with motor racing, and he was soon spending his spare time as a photographer, with his work appearing in many leading magazines, particularly Road and Track. He also collects, restores and races, and has judged at many leading concours. Peter Larson has co-authored a number of books with Ben Erickson on French cars and coach builders, and is now working on Joseph Fogoni, Le Grand Couturier de la Carrosserie Automobile. Peter's worked for many years in the entertainment industry, but is now involved in writing and judging a number of international concours, including the Pebble Beach Concours d'Elegance, where he also serves on the selection committee, as well as Chantilly Art and Elegance, Richard Mille in France, the 21 Gun Salute Concours d'Elegance in India, Salon Privé in England, and the Concours d'Elegance Suisse in Switzerland. In addition, Peter Larson is a member of ICJ, the International Chief Judge Advisory Group. Now, John Mayston Taylor is the former chairman and managing director of Lynx Motors, manufacturer of the Lynx D-Type and Lynx Eventer. Born into a family with a Jaguar collection, he's a lifelong sports car enthusiast and accomplished historic racer with lightweight E-Types and the Ford GT40. When he began to have some of the cars in the family collection recommissioned, he became a client of Lynx and in 1992 acquired the company. His current activities include consultancy services and judging at major international concours events, including for Bill Warner at Amelia Island and Salon Privé. Bitten by the supercar bug in his teens and having grown up with classic cars, Winston Goodfellow eventually switched careers to allow him to photograph and write about the best cars in the world. He's now a leading authority on Italian coach builders, supercars, and collector cars in general, having written for a wide variety of car magazines, including Magneto. He's also the author of several books and one of the most experienced concours judges around. He started judging in the 1980s and was made a Pebble Beach Chief Class Judge in 1989. So gentlemen, you're all welcome, and thank you very much for joining us on this, the roundtable discussion on The Winner Takes It All. Now, you've seen the list of entrants. We're going to have a look at some of them later, but we've got everything from the 1927 Isotto Fraschini Tipo Roadster right through to a 1973 Porsche 91730 Can-Am Spider. So this is a wide selection. But Bill, coming to you first. I mean, all of these entrants are winners of major awards. So it's a tough one to judge, don't you think?
Well, yeah, in some cases we're judging apples and oranges. You know, the 91730, which won Concours de Sport at Amelia Island. We also had the Duesenberg sedan that won Concours d'Elegance. So yeah, it's kind of hard to say that, and that's why we do two awards down here. It's kind of hard to compare apples and oranges when you're comparing 91730 to say the Isotto Fraschini or the Duesenberg. So it's a real challenge for us to come up with the best of the best, bearing that in mind.
But we're going to have a go.
What's that? Yeah, we're going to have a go.
We're going to have a go at it. But Peter, coming to you, I mean, there are some superb examples of European and American design and coach building in the lineup here. You know, what are the standout qualities that separate Figoni and Falaschi and Zagato from Le Baron and Murphy?
Well, obviously they're on either side of the pond. I think that Fagoni and Falaschi are usually considered flamboyant. There's a very flamboyant Delahaye in the class, but there's also a remarkable Talbot Lago Grand Sport that has been given a forensic restoration. It's the only post-war iteration of the famous Fagoni pre-war teardrop style. And it won. It was runner. It won. It was the owner was first timer at Pebble Beach, and it was a runner-up for best of show. And it has since won Salon Privé and Chantilly. Murphy is a more restrained coach builder, I would say, although he worked on somewhat larger chassis. The Duesenberg, which we have here, is a beautiful example of the classic Murphy Roadster, which is the style that was, I think Murphy built about 50. Is that correct? So that's the most common, in quotation marks, Duesenberg. And that's a very trim and elegant and understated car. So whereas in the 50s, of course, you had fins and chrome and more restrained styling in Europe, it was actually the other way around in the 1930s and 40s.
Well, and each have their own I mean, Winston, coming to you, each has its own character, and each concourse has its own character. So, you know, sometimes a car that might win at Pebble Beach would not win at Villa d'Este, and vice versa. You know, how do you choose between the different style of cars?
Basically, it comes down to what are the parameters for the judges at each show. For instance, at Pebble Beach, the vast majority of the judging criterion is based on condition and authenticity, where at Villa d'Este, the vast majority of it is based upon presentation, elegance, and provenance. And so therefore, there have been times where a best of show winner at Pebble did not place at Villa d'Este, and probably vice versa.
Yeah.
And so it really goes down more to the judging criteria than the actual, what's the actual car.
Yeah. I mean, John, you know, you've judged in the UK, you've judged in the USA. Do you approach the task differently at each?
Well, usually it's a matter of the event, really, Richard, rather than the country. The US have adopted more of a points-based system, whereas certain UK events take a more subjective view of it. Bill's event really falls into the latter category, which I think the common denominator is the quality of the entries and the enthusiasm of all the public who enjoy this hobby.
I mean, Bill, you raised the point when you started. You know, we've got, or we don't, but the judges have to choose a winner of class here. But you know, is it a tough call when you're judging an out-and-out race car against a classic road car?
Well, yeah, we're different at Amelia. I abhor points judging because I think it leads you down the wrong road. We put a lot of emphasis on provenance and presence. Certainly, the restoration has to be accurate, and we try to choose judges who know their work well. Winston's been with us before; he knows how we judge. I don't want to offend anybody, but to me, points judging is a lot like a DOT inspection. You gotta have soul. You gotta feel it. The car's got to move you. It's got to have some sort of a presence within your soul. I think judging in a virtual concours like this is tough because you really can't get down and close to it, although the photographs, particularly with the Duesenberg, present very, very well. Probably you're seeing more than you'd even see in a traditional judging format. But yeah, it's difficult. Race cars, of course, they fall apart easy. You can take them apart and look at the details a lot easier than you can on, say, a production car. But that's why we do 2 awards.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and as you've said, as all of you have said, each concourse has its own approach to things. The point system works for some. The more subjective view, taking the provenance into account, works for others. I mean, the Quail as you probably know, same as at the Concours of Elegance in England. It is effectively the entrants who decide who wins their class, who wins the show. So a different approach again. And each
based on the judging expense.
Well, that has not gone unnoticed, as you can imagine. Also, we don't have your encyclopedic memory, so you can introduce 40 people and have their inside leg measurement remembered. I mean, it's astonishing the way you do it. But Peter, coming to you, I mean,
just had
you are, Bill, and we have Richard frozen in time.
Oh. Can you see me?
Well, I introduced 123 without notes.
Well, that's astonishing. Can you guys hear me all right now?
Yeah.
Peter, let's come back to you. We're looking at the Italian entrants we have here. You know, we've got Italian coach work, as we said, from Figoni, Falaschi, Zagato, Vignali. Each has its own character. How do you judge between them?
Well, it was Bill who just said apples and pears. I mean, this is apples and pears in another way. But I will say that no coach builders really worked in an absolute vacuum. A very interesting thing happened after the war in France. It's no secret that Harley Earl and later Bill Mitchell would go to the Paris Salon every year and see what the French had come up with. And it also worked the other way. So you would see certain types of trim, maybe on a South Chic or a Figoni, that would sort of gravitate into Buicks and Oldsmobiles and Cadillacs. But on the other side, in 1947, 48, a lot of the French cars grew portholes. And they were, of course, inspired by the Ventiports that were on the Buicks. So, you know, yes, there is a definite Italian style, there is a French style, and there is an American style, but there's also cross-pollination. I think Donald Osborne, as a matter of fact, wrote a book about it.
Yes, he did. To your point, if you mentioned Mitchell and Earl both going to the Paris Auto Show and coming back with themes, it was you could see a lot of the design influence in the Buick on the sweep spear,
yes,
and on the boat tail Riviera on the Delage side, the DLO, the side window treatment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And a bit of cross-fertilization never hurt anybody.
No.
But it's sort of saying that, yes, you can have a steak in America and you can have a steak in France, but they're not necessarily served in quite the same way.
Mitchell once told me, I was having lunch with him, and he said, we were talking about how designers fed off each other on designs. And one of his statements after about 4 martinis was, if you copy something, you don't copy a Sousy, or you copy a silk purse.
Well, that's what he did with the Cadillac Seville.
He did.
Yes, he said he went out and he copied the Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost, and when he asked him, "Well, copy the best."
Well, you know, funny you should mention that particular car, because that's what the subject matter was. I was talking about the truncated Seville, and Lincoln had just come out with the Versailles, which was what a Ford with a pig's nose trunk lid.
Yeah, that was a Granada with a lot of fluff on it. That's true.
Yeah, and that's where his comment came from.
Yeah. Well, I always liked that first generation Seville. I thought it was a cool car.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to you two guys being asked to judge that class. We're both those cars in it. So.
Exactly. It's an American design.
But the point is that when you look at the Ferrari by Vignale, the Europa, which we have in the class here, you will see this is Michelotti, and Michelotti was in general quite inspired by American styling, and you will see elements on that car that sort of could have come out of Detroit.
A lot of chrome.
Yes, a lot of chrome.
Now, we're going to look at the cars, as you say, in a minute. But Winston, one of the cars entered is the 1927 Isotta Fraschini, and it's as you know, a multi-award winner already. So that's got to be the front runner. But can you see a few others biting at its tail?
Yes. When I went through the class and was looking at the cars, that was in there for me. The 917 was in there. The Alfa Zagato was in there. And the Alfa Zagato has one big plus, which is in its provenance, which is an overall win at Le Mans. And so how, do the judges take that into account or not? It all depends. Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, those were some of the real other contenders for me. And it's kind of hard when you're just looking at the pictures because you have to do, for lack of a better term, an interpretation of, okay, how much presence does the car have? Because presence for me when you're judging best of show is always a huge part of it. Is, what's the wow factor? What's the pow factor? However you want to describe it. My test was if I ever got into a pickle, particularly at Pebble Beach judging best of show, I would always say, okay, if I could open the garage door tomorrow and see one car in there, which one would it be? And that's how that was my personal tiebreaker system.
Well, it's not a bad process. Now, talk about presence. John, there's, as you can imagine, I've got a soft spot for the Maharaja and Mysore's Bentley Mark VI, especially as it was a car I judged in Delhi at the 21 gun salute, where it won the concourse. Could it win this competition, or has he got enough wow factor, or maybe it's just too extreme for some of these guys?
Well, that's the interesting thing about this type of event, that it could. I mean, it's up against some amazing competition, and I think each judge will have his own favourite car. Winston's just pointed out a few. I'm sure Bill has, as well as Peter. So we'll just have to see what happens. But somebody told me a long time ago, and you may recall this, Bill, you said that the cream usually rises to the top.
Yes.
So it'll be interesting to see what rises to the top this time.
And that's an interesting car because, of course, a Bentley Mark VI there's nothing special about a Bentley Mark VI, a lovely car as it is. But when you make it a state car for the Maharaja and Mysore and paint it in rhubarb and custard colours and put your crest all over it, then suddenly it has presence. But anyway, I like it very much.
It depends on what neighborhood you're in is what presence it's got.
Yeah, well.
That's exactly right. It reminds me of Pininfarina talking about when they went to the London Motor Show one time, and this is Sergio Pininfarina telling me this, that his dad was going apoplectic because people were ooh and ahhing that things had gold trim. Rather than an actual design element, they were ooh and ahhing at, oh my God, look at that gold-plated trim. So it does depend on the neighborhood.
I'm afraid that Winston and I are on the same pages on these cars, as diverse as they are. We've had that car at Amelia. Strangely enough, it didn't win overall at Amelia, but it is a stunning car.
It's an incredible car, and when you look at it on photographs, it doesn't do it justice. I mean, those are 22-inch wheels.
Yeah.
It is big.
Yeah, that's part of the thing is how do you gauge presence? And here it's kind of difficult to do that. I mean, so, that's where you have to stand in front of it so you can actually see it and go, oh my God, look at that. I'm getting punched in the face or whatever.
There is a shot of front three-quarter from a high angle next to the fencing, which I think presents it pretty well. The freeboard between the top of the wheel and the fender is a little high on that car, but it's not offensive.
I think it's gorgeous. It's a true 20s car. It's really, I like it a lot.
You're talking about your criteria, Winston, of opening a garage door. Our criteria at Amelia is, what car would you like to be seen in pulling up at the Beverly Hills Hotel to pick up Marlena Dietrich?
Is this the image, Bill? This one?
Yeah.
Is that the image you're talking about, Bill? This one here?
Yeah.
Let's just have a look at that one. Is that it?
Yeah.
It's a superb car.
Yeah, and you can really see the proportions on it because look at the phallicness of that hood.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an impressive piece.
You're right. They don't come any longer.
Yeah.
My friend Tom Gale would say the only thing to make that car look a little better is space the rear wheels out a little bit. That's about it.
Well,
that's it. But it's got to be a contender. But let's just have a look at what else we got. I mean, this was.
I saw it. It won the Concours Swiss when I was there, and I must say that I admired it. It's the only car that I know that has a brassiere.
Here you go. So yeah, I'll try and just, if we zoom in on that There you go. Look at this.
Yeah.
It wasn't unaccustomed for Mr. Mitchell to utilize femininity in his designs, as witnessed by the Cadillac from '57.
But I see the sort of 50s sort of Detroit ladling on of the chrome, you know, in this. It's not, in that sense, not all that Italian a design.
Yeah, no, agreed. Yeah, this is really over the top with much more ornamentation than, versus what one would typically call the Italian line or the Italian style.
Yes, I agree.
I have a problem with the greenhouse area on that car. It just looks too low for the proportions of the car.
Well, Michelotti is often an acquired taste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he's done some beautiful work too, but
He was the most prolific of the freelancers by far.
yeah.
Yes.
This is Flamboyance, as you said.
It's a very dramatic car. I believe it's won some Concours awards.
I thought this was you for a bit, Winston, but I'm not sure it is here.
No, that looks like Jerry Rosenstock.
Yes, it does.
With the pith helmet on, I thought, couldn't that be Winston? No.
Well, there's
Yeah,
a view.
that would be too early for me to judge.
Could we take a look at the other Fagoni, the T26 Grand Sport?
Here you go.
I just want to say that I'm a bit biased here, but I find this car absolutely remarkable.
Look at that.
It's the only the rear fender is pulled all the way up into the roof in one single line, and it's a very powerful car. It's got 200 horsepower. The owner, Robert Codella, he was a first timer at Pebble, and he was runner up for best of show. And since then, the car has gone on to win Chantilly and won Salon Privé also. It's a remarkable car, and the restoration is simply forensic.
It's fun when you get a first timer doing really well. There was one time at Villa d'Este, a guy brought a 33 Stradale, if I'm remembering correctly. And he came up to me, this was before the awards dinner on Sunday night, and he was just absolutely effusive that he won his class. Well, at that moment, I knew the car was winning best of show, which hadn't been announced. And I just thought, dude, you have no idea what's coming. And it's marvelous when you see a guy like this do really well on their first time out.
Can we just look at the nose? You see those strips over the Cyclops headlight?
Yes.
The first owner was a Monsieur Fayol, and he was the owner of a company called Fermeture Éclair, and Fermeture Éclair means zipper in French. So this is the only car in the world that has a zipper on the hood.
Fantastic. Fantastic. It's certainly distinctive.
And it goes like stink.
Well,
I like what you pointed out on the character line coming from above the doors into the rear fender, carrying into the rear fender.
Yeah.
That you don't see. I don't know if I've seen that before on any other car.
Beautiful. No, I think you're right, Peter. Outstanding. And yeah, as you say, it's won some pretty high-profile concourse, so it's been recognised, and certainly it's going to be a strong contender in here. Let's just have a look at the Duesenberg, which is, as you were saying, I think, Bill, you said it, you get a lot more access to the vehicle you might on a normal judging process. I have to say, I'm not entirely sure about the green engine bay, but,
That's correct. No, that's correct.
Totally correct.
I'm sure it's correct. I'm just not sure I like the look of it, but
That's a Randy Ema restoration, so you'd be hard pressed to find anything that's wrong.
Yeah. I used to have a Duesenberg, and this car is absolutely stunning.
Oh yeah, I mean, astonishing detail. And go back to the first picture. Well, not the first picture. Sorry, this picture is just such an atmospheric picture. Great looking car.
Winston, I can't tell. Is that a disappearing top roadster?
Yeah,
I think it is. Yeah.
They made very few non-disappearing tops, I think. Only like 3 or 4.
Now, in that case, I'd pull up at the Beverly Hills Hotel. We're looking for Hedy Lamarr.
Let's just, what was the other one now then? What else can we look at?
How about the Alfa?
The Alfa Romeo.
This is gorgeous. Winston, you particularly struck by this.
Yes, it's this is classic Italian design. Look at the sweep of the fender line. Then you've got the red accent going along throughout the body, front to rear, that moves your eye from one end to the other. The proportions are spot on. And then it also had the, it has that great Le Mans history. It's interesting too, because this was right at the transition point of where aerodynamics were really starting to come into the field, or as it was called back in the day, streamlining. The front, the radiator and all that's still quite upright. The windscreen isn't that slanted. There's nothing really tucked in that makes it aerodynamic. So you can see a little bit of aerodynamics in the rear, but this is really right before aerodynamics started coming in to the field.
The nice thing is that the owner, Peter Sachs, drives that car a lot, enters it a lot. He uses it as design. It's not just a trailer queen.
That's good to hear. But that's the way it is with a lot of the 8C guys. A lot of the 8C guys just take them out and drive them and really enjoy them, which is wonderful to see.
There you go, Mille Miglia.
I had a chance to drive in the Mille Miglia in Paul Gould's 1750 Zagato. And, it had the pedal arrangement with the gas in the middle, the brake on the right, and the clutch on the left. And for 3 days, I didn't breathe.
Yes, that wakes you up in the morning.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, yeah, I've done the Mille Miglia a few times in a very valuable blower Bentley, the Birkin blower, with the same pedal arrangement. You learn fast, though, don't you? When you need.
Well, you do, but you worry about what happens in an emergency, not what in the normal sense of driving it, but
yeah.
What if someone runs out in front of you? Where are your feet going to go?
Yeah, yeah. But this is, as you say, it's good to see that this car is, your words, not a trailer queen. It's out there. It's being used. It was built in 1919. It's Silver Ghost. It's known as the Patiala Ghost because it was built for the Maharaja of Patiala. And there's pictures, we'll probably see one in a minute. When the Prince of Wales made a state visit to the state of Patiala in 1922, he travelled in this car. And this one at Hampton Court last year, it was quite interesting because to get in and out of Hampton Court, and more so Windsor Castle, very secure, to get in with 2 shotguns on each side of the car. Can you see them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a security challenge because the shotguns are sort of part of the car, really. There you go. That's outside Hampton Court with the guns, as you can see.
Yeah, the wheel discs don't do anything for it, but at the time period when they did that, that was pretty striking, wasn't it?
There you go. That's it originally, as you say, with those conical wheel discs. But
yeah, here in the States, we'd have called them moon discs, but you can call them anything you want in Europe.
There you go. That's it. So that's an interesting car. And, as I'll say at the end, of course, we haven't just got the judges' vote on this. We have the public vote as well. And it's great that there's such an eclectic mix of cars to make the choice more interesting. I was just going to pick up on, as we talked about earlier, contrasting cars. I mean, here's an amazing beast as well.
This is great because this is a perfect example of where colors can really make a car, because so many 917s were just a basic white. But when you see like the Sunoco colors like this, where it's just splashing in your face, this was at the Phoenix Museum when just this last year when they did their exhibit on race winners and record breakers. And boy, this thing just had presence when you see it in person with that shape and those colors and the way they're all applied. It's absolutely fantastic.
If you can open up the other file there, or if you can get the details on the engine compartment, I'm afraid that I'm old enough to be able to tell you, yeah, you go there, that I was at Road Atlanta when Mark Donohue debuted that car. And it was very quiet because it was turbocharged compared to other cars, but it was so far and above everything else that was out there that when it came up to the S's, it looked like it was painted on the road. It was phenomenal. And those cars with the knob turned all the way to the right was 1,200 horsepower.
Back in the days when you had to know what you were doing with 11 to 1200 horsepower.
Yeah, isn't that the truth?
I just wanted to share this with you. I know you're hugely enthusiastic, all of you, about this car.
The color doesn't do anything for it, Richard.
You like the rhubarb and custard, but this is the, as you can see, the chap, the Maharaja of Mysore was a very shy, retiring type, and so he only put his crest everywhere you could, on the roof, on the doors, on the flags, front and back of the car. So he wasn't backwards in coming forward. He wanted to make sure everybody knew who was arriving when he was driving the car, and that's.
I was talking to Dave Holes, who used to be director of design at General Motors. He says, you know what the most striking thing about the Miura? I said, well, in your own mind, what are you thinking? He says, it's one of the few cars that if you looked at it in period, you didn't quite know where the motor was. The proportions were so nice.
Yeah.
Because of the transverse motor, yeah.
It was interesting because Pininfarina told me that when Lamborghini displayed the naked chassis at Turin in '65, and he wandered over to take a look. He just said, you know, I was envious. And the reason is for years he had been pushing on Enzo Ferrari to go mid-engine on a street car, and Ferrari was always reluctant, particularly with a 12-cylinder car. And so the whole Dino thing is basically a Pininfarina. That was the result of Pininfarina pushing, and Ferrari finally agreed to say, okay, we'll do it on the street, but we'll go with 6 cylinders. And so when this thing came out, he was envious.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Absolutely.
And they're a great drive. It's just so light on its feet and everything. And you got that wonderful Sidewinder V12 behind you. They are fun.
Now, you had a Periscopio, didn't you?
Yes.
You never had a Miura, did you?
No, I didn't own a Miura. I owned a factory hot rod, documented factory hot rod LP400, and it was brilliant. And I drove it one day a week for the 3.5 years I owned it.
Wow.
I mean, this is again, astonishing presence this car has.
They're cool pieces. We had one of these at Villa d'Este a few years ago, and it really stood out. It won the class because, Richard, you're right. You know, the car does have a lot of presence.
The wood lights work on that really well, don't they?
But they're not original, are they? But
They
they're
are
an original.
They were an option. You could buy them.
They're an original accessory. That's true. That's true. But it's not a Roxton.
I tell you what, I drove Ed Herman's. Ed Herman had one like that. Getting in and out for someone over 6 feet tall is absolutely impossible.
So that's good. I think we've established that there's some interesting cars. Some have greater, broader attraction than others. I can tell that. My championing of the cause for the Bentley has fallen upon deaf ears. I love it to bits. But no, we've got a great mix. It's going to be a tough job for the judges. As I said before, one of the fun parts of the Concours Virtual is that it's not just the judges that decide. There's also a public vote. And as we've seen with some of the earlier classes, sometimes the two line up pretty well. Sometimes they're completely different. So that's the fun element of it. But I think just to say thank you to all of you for giving of your time to be part of this. As you know, there's a very good reason why we do it, and that's why we're encouraging people to support it, because it's a very good cause. But it's a lot of fun. We were talking yesterday with certain people on this call about the Isolation Island Concours, which has been a fantastic shot in the arm to people who love the smaller scale versions of motor cars. I think between this and that and other activities, it's keeping people smiling and occupied and interested in talking about cars during the time when we can't physically get together with our cars. So thanks a lot, guys, for taking part. I'm going to press stop.